Welcome everybody for the feature brief session on IP fragments forwarding, present on AOS-CX 10.15. My name is Aniruddha Jasu. I'm the technical marketing engineer from CX Switching. Let me take this. All right. So I would want to highlight a very interesting feature which is introduced in the CX 10.15.0005 and PSM version 1.100.1-T, right? I think this particular feature has been uh, asked many times because today, without forwarding IP fragments through a DSM, all the fragmented packets are getting dropped for inspection, right? Whether you are denying the policy or allowing the policy, doesn't matter. But today, without this feature, the IP fragmented packets hitting DSM is getting dropped. So this feature introduction is very crucial, and it's very simple as well to configure. Basically, it would be on the PSM itself. There is a new knob called IP fragments forwarding that allows bypassing security policy evaluation for IP fragments, excluding the first fragment, mind it, configurable at both VRF and network level. This is to prevent non-initial fragments from being dropped. So let's say that's the definition. Now, what exactly does it mean, right? So imagine there's a bunch of fragmented packets. So the first non-fragment packet would be evaluated against the security policy which you have defined for that traffic. Subsequent fragments are simply forwarded back to the switch ASIC without policy evaluation, right? It doesn't matter what is the policy. The subsequent fragments would be forwarded back. Or another way of looking at it is we do not support IP fragmentation and reassembly in both CX and DSM. This feature is about bypassing the fragments, but inspecting the first fragment, which has the header of the entire packet, right? Now, IP fragments forwarding knob or the feature does not decrease the security as the first fragment is still inspected, right? Based on that, everything is getting applied. So in a way, you are inspecting the entire fragments, right? So that is the important and the key note here. This is a security improvement as admin may have used service bypass for VLANs where fragmentation was actually happening, and that was prior to 10.15 release. Today, they don't necessarily need to service bypass those VLANs which have IP fragments because we have a way to handle them. So the topology could be in any way. This is for your reference. Recently, we had great sessions on collapsed core deployment, other leaf deployments, where we do see in the data centers, we have fragmented packets coming in, right? And if you are inspecting them, they are getting dropped. Now with this, from anywhere on your data center and also campus, right? In the campus today, radius EP TLS packets are heavy in size. They are actually getting fragmented and getting dropped without this feature. Now, with this knob, we can have the way to handle them. So those are the use cases both in campus and data center environment, and supported platform obviously is CX10K in the network layer, whether it is core or leaf, right? Wherever you are having inspection being done, basically. Okay, so how are we doing that? Here is a way to do it on VRF overview and networks overview section. Right there, marked in yellow, you see there is a new knob which has been introduced, IP fragments forwarding. There is enable, disable, and also inherit from VRF option. There are three options basically. So you can choose either of them based on your requirements, and it's pretty straightforward. You just have to do that to make sure you have this handled, right? Recommendation though, we recommend that all networks in a VRF have identical configuration for IP fragments forwarding. Now, why are we saying that? For example, in a DC, if at all it's unknown that the traffic traversing between the source and the destination is actually a fragmented packet. It's very common. We never, not necessarily know that there's a fragmented packets coming in. It could be any application running that, or it could be any data which is having higher size. So either you track all that and define it on the network level, or you define it on the VRF and it gets you apply it on all the networks, all the VLANs, and enable this option, right? So that way, any data coming in within your east-west traffic, if it is fragmented, it's getting handled, right? And have a safer way of successful inspection. The traffic behavior, I would want to spend some time here. So why have marked these two in green? Because this is where actually the usage of that knob is happening. So even if you have connection tracking enabled or disabled, and you have service bypass disabled, that means you are redirecting the traffic to DSM. And if you have this IP fragments forwarding knob enabled, the traffic redirect is enabled. First fragment with the L4 info is inspected. The rest of the fragments are bypassed and forwarded back to the switch ASIC without inspection, and they get normally handled, meaning it gets to the destination. Now, if you have a policy which is saying deny, then the first fragment will get denied and there is nothing to forward, right? Basically, rest of the fragments will go back, but they will not have any L4 info, so they eventually get drops. Similarly, if you have connection tracking enabled, the same behavior because you have IP fragments forwarding enabled as well. Now, the challenge would come here when you have service bypassed enabled, right? Whether you have connection tracking enabled or disabled doesn't matter in these two rows, but service bypass is enabled. If service bypass is enabled, irrespective whether you have IP fragments forwarding enabled or even disabled, the packets are actually not even hitting DSM because you have service bypassed them. So packets are not redirected to DSM. Fragments forwarded will be handled by CX itself, but without inspection because you're not sending it to them, DSM. And this one where you have service bypass disabled and IP fragment forwarding also disabled, which is the actual or today's behavior, right? Without this particular knob. So any data packet that has the more fragment bit and or any fragment offset value set will be dropped because there's no way you are able, DSM is able to handle it without this feature. So these packets will not be inspected by DSM. And again, if you have service bypass enabled but IP fragment forwarding disabled, the behavior is same as there is no packet getting redirected to DSM. So there's no inspection. Hope this is clear. Now there is a way to look at IP fragment drops graph in a graph on PSM itself dashboard. There is an IP fragment drop options. The one which is not increasing, that is the blue circle, is when you see there is no drop. That means fragment handling is enabled. That is the IP fragments forwarding knob is enabled. As soon as you disable that, you would be seeing an increase in the drops because there is no inspection happening, or there's no way PSM or the DSM can inspect the fragmentation, right? So this is another way of looking at the dashboard graph. I would like to thank you on that, and please do join the ARX community as well for more details across technologies and solutions.